Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick, and today I've got part 2 of my interview with Derek Drinkwater, the man who replicated Briggs Cunningham's famous Monstre Cadillac. A lot has happened since I first spoke to Derek back in late May. So this part 2 really just kind of brings this story up to the present day. What's happened with all the vintage racing he's done and crossing the country with his car. Remember, he's driving it, not trailering it. So really kind of an interesting turn of events, as you'll see. And I caught up with Derek on the road. So here is part 2 of my interview with Derek Drinkwater. Enjoy. Derek Drinkwater back for more. And,
well, it's been an adventure since we last spoke.
Yes, it has. And, I wanted to get together with you and sort of have an epilogue, right, to our prior conversation. And right now you're sitting in a hotel room in Michigan. So listen, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. So much has happened. First of all, when we last spoke, you were still in England.
Yeah.
And so you had to fly out to California, collect the car, and then drive cross country, and then race at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And at Elkhart, you had a minor disaster, right, mechanically?
Yes. So what happened? I believe on the Monday, we weren't supposed to be there until I think it was Tuesday. No, we got there on Sunday. I forget now. It seems so long ago. But we were there early. We didn't know what to do. And then the next minute, the track phoned up and said, "What are you doing outside? Get your butts in and we'll find a place for you and look after you." And they were just outstanding. And then we got to race. Or to practice. So we had three practices on Wednesday, 3 on Thursday. Everyone just wanted to see the car on the track.
Of course.
And then Friday, we had qualifying, Saturday qualifying, and the track was just, people said, "What do you think of the track?" And it's a little bit like someone's plucked bits out of every different track, because when you're driving through the trees, it has this hint of LeMans. And then you go, turn 5. Turn 5 was the most interesting for me. And the uphill grade is quite a steep pull. But we had some followers. So Mr. Redmond was one of the followers with some of his pals. And
Brian Redmond, of course, legend. Yeah.
And him and his pals were following us, and every time we did a practice, they would come out and have a chat and everything. And they said they thought the most not exciting bit of the track was turn 5 and watching me come round it. And he said, we did one of the practices and both guys came over and, they were just smashing, because to think you've got old school racers coming over and sort of getting involved was quite something.
Oh, yeah.
And they were saying, how was it on turn 5? And I said, well, it's very difficult because most people will either brake at, anything from 3 to 150 out or later. I'm nearly braking at 500. So then
wow.
Put some more markers out there.
Yeah.
And I said at one point, I left it a little bit too late to brake, and I was braking, then I braked a bit harder. Then I thought I was going to get a hernia. I was pushing the pedal that hard, and then went sideways, 3 wheels off the track, and, and up the hill we went. Another guy that was an official there come over to me, and he said, he was like the steward of the track, and he could watch all the screens at any one time. And he came over and he said, "You're having far too much fun out there." And and I just didn't want to get off the track. And then we had the race on Sunday. Oh, no, we had the parade. And for those who've never been there, you just need to go just for the parade, because people were saying to me, you booked into the parade? And I said, yes. They said, well, there's 20,000 people. I'm like, no way. I've been around the towns, and they've got to have exaggerated that a little bit, maybe 2,000 or 3,000. And all the race cars were driving down the street, around the town, and there must have been people were going wild for the cars. It was just like a disaster movie, and everyone sort of gathered at that town, and that was where you need to survive.
I can imagine.
So that was.
Well, you know what's cool about that, Derek, is that over the decades, that sort of same thing has happened in LeMans, the town of LeMans, because Circuit de la Sarthe is not that far away.
Yeah.
And before and after the race, the cars are in the town. In fact, often in front of a bar, in front of a hotel.
Box up.
And yeah, so it's a little bit like that, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And everyone was just fabulous. And we had a little interview in the town, and I gave the interviewer a LeMans star, and people, they wanted me to do it again. I thought, no, because I'm going to muck that up. So that was fun. But the people are just magical. I've never known so many people that are so in love. And people are in love with cars where, not just our car, but all cars, all over the place. But there was something about Road America and Elkhart Lake, because even the workers are so proud to be there, and everyone just cannot do enough to help anyone, which is just fabulous. But then we got to race on Sunday, and we had a little bit of rain, so it was going out in the wet, and I was okay. We sort of qualified, I think, 25th or something out of 40 odd cars. And we were having passed a few cars, which is quite nice. And then me and the Mini, there was a Mini that we were having, and he could not catch me, or could not pass me, but he sat right behind me most of the time. And we were having, a lot of fun. And then white flag came out, and I think it was just after turn 5. I heard just before the flag came out, after turn 5, I thought I heard a noise. And I thought, back off and then try it again. And I sort of let the Mini go past, and then I put my foot down again. And I thought, that doesn't sound very good. And so
What did it sound like, Derek?
It sounded like the bottom end. Like, something.
It was a knock.
It was a knock. And you could... Yeah. You could hear that run, the deep end. And I thought, if I keep going, we've still got a long journey. And I could total the engine completely, because in the Caddy engine, the 50 Caddy engine has no oil filter. Or it has like a reserve oil filter that just sort of filters something. There's no actual oil filter in the bottom engine. And I was gutted to think we've done all what we've done to pull in. But in hindsight, the amount of racing we done at Daytona, because there was lots of practices, lots of qualifiers, racing, and then the drive across the states, and then Laguna, and then the drive across the states, and then everything we done, we were probably on really an overhaul point. We've done that.
Right, because you've got probably, by that point, you've got 15 to 20,000 miles on the engine, right?
Yeah, with the racing and everything. Yeah, far too many hours. So
right,
but so we,
and also I should mention again, like, you crossed the United States in the summer across the desert of California and Nevada. So, I mean, that right there would challenge any old car.
Yes. So I think that's about altogether we did about 3,500 miles. So if you take the miles and the amount of hours racing, the cumulatives, we've done okay. And then I think it must have been 2,000 to 2,500 from where we were at California. And we had a few detours to Road America. So then the problem was we had to speak to the track, because I've got a car that we need that's not going. And I had to pull the motor to actually work out what's wrong with it. And the track was fantastic. They gave us a little carport, and they said, you're there for a few days, do what you need to do. And, if you need anything, just shout. Next thing we know, one of the guys from the workshop reports an engine lift over. So Sunday night, while everyone's going home, I pulled the engine. And then Monday morning, I stripped the engine, and then found that on number 3, the bearing had spun.
Right. And we're talking about the connecting rod bearing.
That's it. Yeah, the connecting rod bearing. So that had spun. Everything else looked okay. But then we had to work out, we needed a machine shop. We needed to find parts. Because the 50 CAD is not that easy. Although we're in America, it's still quite a rare block.
Derek, was your crank journal scored?
On 3, it was quite bad. On 4, it was ish. And then on the mains, were all okay. And the rest of the crank was all okay. The mains and the connecting rods that wouldn't affect it hadn't picked up at all. So we're very lucky. And the amount of swarf from those 2 bearings hadn't really attacked the bores and the cam and the rocker arms.
Good.
So there was fine debris, but it more, fine swarf, nothing to really sort of gouge anything.
Right.
So we had a lovely guy who was introduced to on a Sunday, came Monday morning and said, "What do you need? And do you need me to take you to go get a car, or do you need me to take you to get parts?" And everyone was really helpful. And he brought his friend down and he said, "Hey, I've got an old truck." He said, "Borrow the truck for as long as you like. Do whatever you want, whenever you want, and just call us if you need anything."
Wonderful.
And so we borrowed the truck. He brought that down, borrowed the truck. We found a machine shop. And they were really good because a couple of people had told them what we were up to. They looked at the crank while we were there. And the one guy, he was tad grumpy at first, but really knew his stuff. And he was on board with what we were doing, to the point where he came back about 2 hours later while we were in the shop, because the guy was trying to order all. What he said was he was happy to order whatever we needed, so it all got delivered at one place. So the guy came back and he said, "We're going to polish all the mains, and we're going to polish 6 of the rod ends journals, and then give you a plus on those 2 offending ones. So we're only going to grind on those."
Right.
So, which means it prolongs the life of the engine. And
sure.
So that's what he started to do. The other guy managed to order all the parts for us. And the 2 offending rods, they then sized. One was slightly out of shape, which they then done there and then. And they said, "Bring the other 6 and we'll check all those as well." So I took those back the following day. And this was on Wednesday. We got all the parts had come in by that stage. They got the rest of the rods checked and they were all okay. By lunchtime, we had everything in our pocket and we're driving back to the track on Wednesday.
Incredible. I mean, Derek, it's amazing because, first of all, we're talking about a 74-year-old engine design.
Yeah.
And getting those parts and finding a competent machine shop within striking distance that is not going to tell you, well, it'll be 2 weeks, that's going to be able to drop what they're doing and help you at a moment's notice. That is also miraculous. That's so rare. And of course, it's probably a little bit easier in a place like Elkhart Lake where, racing has been an institution for so many years. But I would say first of all, you got really lucky, and then all of the goodwill of all these people. It's just wonderful.
If you needed anything at that point, everyone was on board so much, and everyone was offering so much out. And the machine shop, they just stopped what they were doing and just did it for us. Once they knew what was happening, etc. And people on Facebook and Instagram were just, offering all sorts. We also, another friend that heard, in California, so we had a plan B. So if we couldn't do the engine, the plan B was hire a pickup, drive back to California because he had offered us another Caddy engine. So that was plan B. So we always had a plan B. But also we were doing this. I've got a limited amount of tools. So I've got a set of spanners, a set of sockets in a box that my suitcase is bigger.
Yeah.
And so the main thing with trying to do this is we were in car park.
Right.
With a lean-to and trying to keep the engine clean, and you just do things slightly different you do in your workshop, and you make do. We didn't have anything to put close the pistons up, to put the pistons in. So we needed something.
You mean you didn't have a ring compressor?
A ring compressor.
Right.
And we spoke to this guy, Tom, and he said, I've got one, or my friend's got one, and didn't hear anything. And about half hour later, he turned up and he said, mine is a bit old. So we went and rented one from one of the stores.
Right.
And so they just didn't, they made sure whatever we wanted was what they could do for us for the most good.
No, it's great. And by the way, I want to let you know that when I saw on Instagram that you were having engine trouble, I put out an SOS and I got in touch with a friend of mine who is in the Midwest, and he's a crack mechanic. And I thought he was still in Elkhart Lake because he was working on some other stuff.
Yeah.
Turns out he was already back home, but I was trying to give you some help.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was so many people were following us, and everyone wanted just to like put out their hand and say, if you need anything, just shout, which was great.
But there's nothing to do but roll up your sleeves and get to work, right? I mean,
well, it's difficult because there was a number of things. I was beating myself up because I didn't finish the race. And then I beat myself up thinking, what if I didn't do that first day of practice? The car might have lasted longer. What if I didn't push it that much faster and just stay a little bit slower? Then we may have had a car. We may have done, we may have not. But it's all about racing. And the Monstre this is the first time every race we do is a first. So we are like Cunningham did when he first went to LeMans. I'm doing a first for this designer car. So at Laguna Seca, we managed to do a 2-minute lap, which is quite wild in something so heavy and with drum brakes. And then at Road America, we did a 3:06, which I didn't think I could get because in practicing, it was a 3:15, 3:16.
Wow, you shaved quite a few seconds off then.
And yeah, it was, but we were doing what the car was meant to do. So yes, it broke. It meant that we had to like dip into our budget quite a lot that we didn't really plan to. But once we got all the bits, I was a little bit happier because my main concern is I knew how hard it was to get some of those parts because they'd got come so far. But once I had everything in my hand and then putting it together, it was, we started about 12 o'clock on the Wednesday, and then by 8 o'clock in the evening, I had built it and dropped it in the car. And then on Thursday, by lunchtime, it was running.
That sounds like a lot of fun to me. I mean, had I been there, I would have loved to have assisted you and helped out. I went on a tour a few years ago, Derek, with some antique cars, and I was in a 1908 Panhard touring car.
Wow.
And we had a few mechanical issues along the way, and I was, what everyone else was having lunch, and a few of us were turning wrenches on this car to keep it on the tour. And it's part of the fun. If you don't look at it that way, you're missing out.
Well, someone messaged on Facebook and he said, you're having a bit of a bum holiday. And I sort of disagree completely, because there we are. We're in a famous racetrack. And as we're stripping the engine and building the engine, people are practicing. There's Porsches, there's all sorts of things racing round. So with all this noise in the background. And I'm doing what we enjoy doing, which is cars. So, yes, it was a hiccup, but that's what cars do. They give you a challenge. And,
yes,
the car gave us a challenge, and, we did it. So, and then the problem is, for us, it was quite emotional, because while we got the car going, the track turned around and said they were doing a coffee drive. And they said, "Oh, would you bring it up?" And they wanted me to go around the track with it, with everyone else. And I'm like, not really, because, we have already just built it, needs to be running.
Sure.
But leaving there was quite emotional, because everyone had been so lovely. And I mean, everyone in the town, the racing, just generally. Yeah, it was quite emotional, in fairness. When we left, it was like something had just gone from us.
Oh yeah, I mean, you sort of developed. It was kind of a situation where you rapidly developed camaraderie and a relationship with all these people, and I mean, obviously the enthusiasm in the town. I can completely understand. Derek, I want to ask you about the brakes. You said earlier that on going into turn 5, you were really standing on the brakes. Were you just experiencing brake fade and they were hot, or is it something else?
It's very difficult, because every track, because I have no history. If you take a GT40, someone along the other line will tell you, turn 5, this will happen, and you do turn 6, this will happen. But with a Monstre, there is no history of these tracks. We are doing a first. So when we were doing a 215, 315, 316, I was all over the place, because I was trying to push the car. And at one point on the bend, I actually had 2 wheels off, and the wall was coming up pretty fast, but I stayed fast. But what I managed to do after a little while, it's not so much learning the track, it's the car with the track. So the reason we got to go so quick is, you go underneath the start line, and then you turn in, you've got hard brakes. Then you go down, and then you're in second, another hard brake. So what you've got to do then is stay off the brakes and hold it in second gear a little bit longer, which means we worked out maybe why the engine's done it, because it's the longest period I've ever been in second gear in places. And usually I would change up, brake hard, and then change again. But also by doing that, I didn't touch the brakes. And it was a bit scary, because I'm not braking, but it means I've saved the brakes for 2 or 3 bends later. So
at that point you're on overrun, just letting the engine do the braking for a period.
Yeah.
Which puts stress on your gearbox, of course.
And also, especially when you're changing gear down, the oil pressure drops because you're the reg.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a combination of things. But what we think happened, by me doing that, the center of the engine may have heated up more. So which then caused the issue. But what it was, it's not so much brake fade, but the car's 3,700 pounds. And I haven't got any mega large brakes, because it has to be what the car had in period. So it's the drums are not full-blown race drums off a Buick or something else. They are genuine Caddy drums. So the brakes are good, but you don't want to take the chance of cooking them, because even when we were going up the straight, I was doing about between 117 to 119 miles an hour. And I go past the wall at that speed, the end of the pit lane, and I just tap the brakes. And that's got to be at least, I don't know, 600 meters out. I tap the brakes just to make sure that I've got brakes, because we've just come from the bottom where we've been braking hard, and you don't know whether you've got brakes or not because they're not modern. You don't know whether you've had some sort of fade or anything. So I'm tapping the brakes just to make sure I've got brakes. And then at 400 meters out, I'm hard on it because it takes so long. Yeah. And you've got all that braking that's heating the brakes up. So if you can save them so you don't have to push so hard, it means when you've got them, you can slow it down quicker. And then, so it was, it's just the way you got to drive it. I was going to say challenging, but it's not. It's just the way you drive it. And
are you back? Derek, are you running the finned drums on that car?
No.
Okay.
They are basically, sorry.
No, the reason I ask is because, Cadillacs at one time did have finned drums, and that was to increase the surface area to cooling and reduce fade.
Yes, but the rules state for LeMans, the car has to be a production car. So that means production brakes, production suspension. You're allowed. Right. In 1950, they put truck coil springs on, which are beefier and anti-roll bar. But we use a slightly moderner brake material today, which we're allowed, but you're not allowed to put something like disc brakes or thin brakes because that didn't have it in 1950.
Right.
And we tried true to the original car, which means when we do something like Road America, if Cunningham would have been doing that in that day, you sort of feel that we're matching what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And of course, anyone who's in vintage racing has to conform to those rules. Do you think, Derek, that there's that your oiling system is? Do you think that the engine is getting some oil starvation? Going round and round. Obviously, the oil is going to move with the G-force. It's going to be forced to one side of the pan or the other. Do you think that's?
No, we've got it's got we'll call it loosely a splash pan underneath. There's a shield which stops some of the oil, and the oil's not dropping off completely, because if the oil, we would have had.
You would see it on your gauge, right? You would see your oil pressure drop. So
yeah, so you would see it drop, but also when we strip the engine, the 7 and 8 were okay, which where the oil pump is, and 1 and 2 was okay. It was just 3, and we've had it before on another engine that we built. And what we now feel that what's happening is, because I was longer than I've ever been in second gear,
right?
Because we are pushing the car now, more and more every time we race it. We know where our limits are for the brakes, and so we are pushing it, and it's the longest time in second gear. The oil was hotter. The center of the engine, we feel, is hotter, and it's one of two things. Either it's expanding and the oil's thinner, which is creating a little bit more clearance, and then at that point, it lets go. So, which is something that if Cunning was racing it from then for a number of years, we may have learned. Because when he raced in 1950, they did 24 hours. When Cadillac tested their engines, they're only 7-to-1 compression ratio. They did 10,000 cycles with no failures. So we know the engine's good for it, but we are putting it through things that people haven't done before. Because if you take a lot of people who race the Allards that got Caddy engines,
sure,
they aren't doing remote oil filters. They are changing, even 2 or 3 years later, they were doing stuff with different cranks, etc. But ours is stock. So
yes,
we're learning.
Well, I think it's fascinating to think about Le Monstre on different tracks all around the world, because in its day, the original Le Monstre basically only ran Le Mans and Daytona, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And so and so there's
The original only ran at Le Mans.
Oh, okay.
Cars only did Le Mans. And then they came back and they never raced again.
Right. So it's so cool to think about. It's almost like a fulfillment of a what if fantasy. What if Cunningham continued to campaign the car? I just love it, Derek. What you're doing is so cool to me. and I've been cheering for you the whole way as you make your way across America. So what's next? Right now, I know you're in Michigan and you've got a bit of R&R time, but what's next?
Yeah, well, tomorrow we are going to Cadillac Museum. There's a car cruise, so 500 or 600 cars. And then we've just been told about another thing that's going on that I can't even remember, where people go for a drive. You pay $50 and they like go from A to B. It's like 60 miles or something. But so we've got a little bit of time, but the next one is Watkins Glen. So
yes,
Watkins Glen at the end of August, which is where we finish our journey. And the original did a parade lap in 1950. So, and we've been asked to have a drive round the old road course, which I'm really excited about, and then race at Watkins Glen. So that's our next goal. But I'm not sure if I said to you on the last chat that I didn't realise that next year is the 75th anniversary of both Cadillacs going to Le Mans.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do, we may have to crowdfund, is try and rub shoulders with Cadillac or Haggerty or someone, because it would be great to take both Caddies and race them at Le Mans next year. And if we could get some sort of support, wouldn't it be awesome if we brought them both back over and race Road America and Watkins Glen next year? So
it would be incredible. And everyone who's listening right now should follow your Instagram, which is Derek Drinkwater 48, and keep up with your adventures and see what's in store, and they can also keep tabs on the crowdfunding effort. So, man, Derek, I wish I could have been there in Elkhart, and I wish you were coming to Monterey Car Week. By the way, I'll be up there again, but at some point we will shake hands, my friend, and
yes,
I want to sit in that car and maybe even get a ride if that's okay.
No, that's it.
So
that'd be brilliant. Yeah,
wonderful. All right, my friend, Derek Drinkwater, the man who recreated Le Monstre. Thanks for coming back, man. Really fun to talk to you again.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we'll keep you updated as we're going on.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. If you like what you've heard, share the show with your friends and become a patron at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. Thanks for listening.